When we talk about the equipment of an American soldier, it is easy to assume we only mean his rifle, the M1 Garand in WW2, the Springfield in WW1, the M4 today. But in reality, the weapon is only one piece of a much larger ecosystem. The equipment of a soldier is a whole integrated system, and if one piece fails, the soldier fails. The rifle without ammunition is just a stick. Ammunition without pouches is useless weight. Boots that give blisters will destroy morale faster than enemy artillery. And a rain jacket that actually keeps the soldier warm can be the difference between combat effectiveness and trench foot. Equipment is not just object. Equipment is capability. In the U.S. Army, every single item issued to a soldier is a result of doctrine, budget, manufacturing industry, and combat experience. The Quartermaster Corps, the Infantry Board, the Army Ordnance Department, they all play roles in deciding what the soldier carries. Every buckle, every strap, every pouch has a reason. American equipment is never random. It is always engineered around doctrine. For example, doctrine says the U.S. infantrymen must deliver accurate fire at medium range. Therefore, the U.S. develops and issues the M1 Garand semi-automatic rifle in WW2. Therefore, ammo load must increase. Therefore, belt design must change. Therefore, weight distribution must change. Therefore, suspenders change. One decision triggers a cascade. This is the core. Equipment is not isolated, it is a system. Let's define what categories we must include when we analyze what an American soldier wears and carries. These categories are universal. 1. Clothing, uniform, fabric, jacket, pants, boots, underwear. 2. Load-bearing system, belt, suspenders, ammo pouches. 3. Primary weapon. 4. Secondary weapons, pistol, knife, bayonet. 5. Ammunition load. 6. Personal tools, entrenching tool, canteen, cup. 7. Protective gear, helmet, gas mask in WW1 and early WW2, body armor, modern. 8. Survival gear, first aid packet, emergency ration. 9. Comms gear, none in WW1 for riflemen, some in WW2, limited, heavy radios. Today, full digital devices. 11. Optional or role-specific equipment, for example, bar gunner, paratrooper. 11. Pack or rucksack. That is every soldier, no matter the era, 1918, 1944, 2023. But each era changes the weight, the materials, the distribution. And to Americans specifically, this matters because the U.S. Army is one of the few armies in history that consistently has invested heavily in equipping the individual soldier, not just mass manpower. The U.S. has steel production, textile production, chemistry, and logistics capacity. American soldiers in both world wars were far better supplied than almost all enemy forces. Germans had excellent design, but often shortages. Soviets had quantity, but extremely limited individual kit. Americans in WWI-2 often had more socks, more ammo, more rations, more comfort items. You can measure American doctrine with a scale. Weight literally reveals priorities. That is why historians look at soldier's load as a number. For example, U.S. WW1 infantrymen average combat load weight is approximately 55 to 65 pounds. U.S. WWI-2 infantrymen mid-war load approximately 60 to 72 pounds. Modern U.S. infantrymen Afghanistan average approximately 90 to 120 pounds. This tells a huge story. More technology equals more weight. Survival improved, firepower improved, but mobility decreased. Military historians call this the weight spiral. And because this video is targeted for American audience, this is extremely relevant. Many people have a nostalgic picture of WWI American infantry. The guy with a Garand, a steel pot helmet, clean uniform. But in reality, WWI equipment was designed because of lessons learned in WW1 and modern gear is built from lessons learned in WWI-2. Every war rewrites the blueprint of equipment. That is why we must compare. You cannot understand WW2 American Soldier without looking back to WW1, because WW2 uniform design is made directly to avoid WW1 problems. For example, wool in WW1 was primary, but cotton garments like the M1943 field jacket in WW2 emerged largely due to lessons from WW1 trench moisture problems. You cannot understand modern soldier weight without noticing that WW2 introduced mass-scale load-bearing harness systems. The LCE, later Alice, later Mole lineage begins with WW2. The WW2 web gear is the ancestor of modern modular load system. That is why comparison across eras is necessary. Also, weight numbers are not interesting trivia. They are core to understanding soldier experience. A soldier marching 12 miles with 65 pounds is doing fundamentally different work than a soldier marching 12 miles with 110 pounds. The equipment is not static. It defines the man. So part 1 is establishing the framework. If we don't define what we are measuring, the story is just romantic nostalgia. But here, we need a neutral, analytical tone. Equipment is a language of an army. In WW1, the US was a new mass army, late entry, borrowing heavily from French and British gear. In WW2, the US arrives with industrial superiority. Gear is mass-produced at scale. In modern times, the US soldier's body becomes a platform for electronics, armor, sensors. Each era reflects national industry. WW1 equals wool, leather, brass. WW2 equals cotton canvas webbing, steel, mass-produced semi-auto rifles. Modern equals ceramics, Kevlar polymer weapons, digital comms. It is technological anthropology. Equipment tells us who the American soldier is in each era. The soldier is always the same species, one man with finite endurance, but the army changes what is strapped onto him. This video script will use numbers constantly: weapon weights, ammo weights, uniform fabric weights, pack loads, because Americans appreciate quantity, because quantity proves reality. Just say the Garand was lighter than the bar is a vague statement. But when you state the M1 Garand unloaded weight, 9.5 pounds, that number hits the brain with clarity. You instantly understand that the bar gunner is a different creature than the rifleman. You instantly see burden and specialization. The purpose of this documentary script is to show physical reality, not to idealize the soldier. The soldier lives in numbers, pounds, ounces, cubic inches. That is how we will think. When the American Expeditionary Forces landed in Europe in 1917, the U.S. was not entering a fresh war. The war had been grinding for 3 years. The French and British had already burned through entire generations of men. The British Army had gone through multiple pattern changes in uniforms, boots, helmets, trench gear, puttees, and weapons. The French had replaced bright blue uniforms with horizon blue, and then gradually shifted toward more practical tones. The Germans had shifted from Pickelhaube leather helmets to steel helmets, but the Americans were still wearing 1912 to 1916 era uniforms, fighting in a world that had already evolved to industrial trench war. That means the American soldier of World War I was fundamentally a transitional soldier. He was stepping into a battlefield optimized for artillery, gas, machine guns, and static lines, but with equipment designed in a pre-war paradigm. To understand World War II gear, we must understand this baseline. The World War I infantryman had 4 immediate challenges that shaped his equipment. 1. He needed to survive trench weather, mud, moisture, cold. 2. He needed to carry his ammunition and personal kit on foot for miles. 3. He needed to fight with a bolt-action rifle. 4. He needed to be gas mask ready.
The gas mask was the biggest psychological change between pre-war and wartime equipment. Before 1914, no army imagined its soldiers would need a constant, worn at all times protective respirator pouch strapped to their chest. World War I forced that, and that single object, the gas mask, changed harness systems, load distribution, pouch placement, and doctrine. The uniform in World War I, the American infantryman typically wore wool shirt, olive drab wool flannel, wool service coat, M1917, breeches-style trousers, tight below knee, puttees or leggings, hobnailed leather boots. This uniform was fundamentally a hybrid of late 19th century riding trousers plus early 20th century wool field uniform. The trousers were not straight-legged like WW2 Ironmen. They were breeches because pre-war doctrine assumed horse-mounted officers and cavalry influence. Even infantry was influenced by cavalry tailoring.
Wool was chosen because it stays warm even when wet. In cold, wet northern France, this mattered. But wool is heavy. A wool coat plus shirt plus wet environment equals weight accumulation. The wool service coat alone weighed around 3.5 to 4.5 pounds depending on size. Wet wool can double in weight. Boots. Boots were leather, hobnailed with nailed soles. They were not anatomically cushioned. They were durable, but they were not optimized for miles of marching under heavy weight. Boots were far more prone to blistering compared to later WW2 designs. Helmet. When the U.S. entered the war, it initially had no steel helmet. American troops adopted the British Mk1 Brodie-style steel helmet, designated M1917 in U.S. service. That helmet, shallow bowl, wide brim, weighed around 1.3 pounds, about 0.6 kilograms. It was designed primarily for overhead shrapnel, not for small arms protection. That tells us something important. Doctrine expected artillery fragments to be the main threat, not sniper bullets, not direct fire. Artillery had become the killer, and the helmet's geometry reflects this reality. Load-bearing equipment. The American infantrymen carried equipment on a cotton web belt system that was influenced heavily by British design. The M1910 equipment set, later adjusted and modified, included cartridge belt, suspenders, haversack, bayonet scabbard, canteen plus cup, first aid packet, gas mask in separate pouch, sometimes mess kit. The total weight of the soldier's immediate fighting load, meaning the gear on his body without full pack, averaged around 30 to 35 pounds. But if the soldier carried a full pack, full ammunition, and full trench kit, the load could easily exceed 60 pounds. In many after-action letters and memoirs, American soldiers complained about the haversack. It was rigid, it was inflexible, it was hard to adjust. The design assumed that things would be packed one specific way, and soldiers had to follow that exact packing sequence. In contrast, by WW2, the U.S. moved toward more flexible arrangements, more modular, more pouches.
Rifle and ammunition. The primary rifle of the WW1 American infantrymen was the M1903 Springfield, 5-round internal magazine, bolt action. The rifle weighed around 8.7 pounds unloaded. With bayonet fixed, add another 1 pound plus. Ammo was .30-06, the same caliber used later in WW2, but the soldier fired fewer rounds per minute because of bolt action. That means that ammunition load was lighter for equivalent fight time. Typical ammunition carried by the average infantryman, around 100 rounds, .30-06, cartridges stored in 5-round stripper clips, sometimes plus 20 to 40 in reserve, depending on orders. Total ammo weight around 3.5 to 4 pounds. This is much lighter than WW2 ammo loads because semi-auto rifles encourage more fire, and LMGs in the squad also changed the ammo burden distribution. Grenades. Grenades existed, but not in the same standardized way as WW2. Americans used both fragmentation and concussion grenades, but distribution was inconsistent. A WW1 soldier might carry 1 to 2 grenades, or none, depending on supply. The gas mask. This deserves special emphasis. The gas mask in 1918 was not a curiosity. It was a life-or-death item. Soldiers kept it in a special pouch on the chest or hanging at the ready, not hidden in a pack. Typical weight of mask plus canister, 3 pounds. It was large, bulky, stiff. Soldiers hated wearing it, but they feared gas more. Food or rations. The American WW1 ration system was extremely heavy. Canned goods, hard bread, meat cans. If a soldier carried 1 day of rations, around 3 pounds, multiple days can exceed 7 to 10 pounds. Canned goods are durable, but extremely heavy compared to dehydrated modern rations. How this all adds up. Total load weight. So what is the weight profile of the American WW1 infantryman? Historians estimate that in most combat marches, not ceremonial, not inspection, typical load weight ranged 55 to 65 pounds. That number sits at the core of American soldier history, because WW2 will not depart far from this number, but change what that weight consists of.
Trench fighting and equipment impact. In WW1, equipment was shaped by environment, not theory, not projection, reality. Mud, rain, shell holes, rats, wet wool. The equipment did not make the soldier comfortable, it made him functional. Survival first. In many accounts, American soldiers discarded items just to move easier. They threw away extra clothing. They threw away mess kits. They threw away unnecessary straps. By late war, soldiers streamlined themselves instinctively because doctrine lagged reality. But the official design philosophy of WW1 was, the soldier must carry everything he needs, always. That is why the haversack was large and rigid. It assumed a soldier always carries full burdens. In practice, this was not sustainable. In WW2, the U.S. quartermaster learned from this. WW2 gear became more modular, more flexible, more adaptable, because WW1 taught that overstructuring the load creates inefficiency. Why this matters for our long narrative. WW1 is the baseline. The WW2 American soldier, the M1 Garand soldier, emerges from this foundation. WW1 is bolt action. WW2 is semi-automatic. More reloads, more ammo, more load-bearing pockets, more production. WW1 was rigid haversack. WW2, more modular web gear. WW1 is gas is everywhere. WW2, gas is feared but rarely used. Gas mask weight goes down in practice, rarely used in real combat after early war. WW1, boots heavy and stiff. WW2, more optimized boot sole, better cushioning. WW1, approximately 60 pounds. WW2 baseline, also 60 pounds, but redistributed. Everything from WW1 carries forward, but transforms. It is not that WW2 invented new things, it refined things.
But WW1 also had one other equipment factor that is rarely discussed: lack of radios at squad level. The lack of comms meant that the soldiers' equipment was optimized for static trench warfare, not fluid warfare. WW2, by contrast, is a war of movement, and equipment shifts accordingly. So if we ask, what did the WW1 soldier teach the WW2 Army? The answer is everything about what not to do. Example: WW1 gear overloaded soldier with canned rations. WW2 introduces lighter K rations and C rations. WW1 soldier carried gas mask constantly. WW2 soldier often carries gas mask less centrally as gas threat fades. WW1 soldier had limited grenades. WW2 soldier gets standardized grenades and belt grenade pockets. WW1 soldier had single weapon type for entire squad. WW2 squad becomes combined arms internally, rifles plus bar plus sometimes SMG. So WW1 is the old world of equipment, the pre-industrial transitional era. WW2 becomes the industrial optimized era. If the World War I American infantrymen represented the last generation of pre-industrial soldier gear design, then the World War II American infantrymen represented the full industrial revolution of soldier equipment. The U.S. Army in 1942 to 1945 was not simply issuing gear, it was mass manufacturing standardized equipment by the tens of millions of pieces. Nothing about World War II American soldier gear was artisan or old world. It was assembly line logic. It was the Ford Model T philosophy applied to the human body as a combat system. Uniforms became standard patterns, webbing became standardized kits, weapons became mass-produced precision machines, and ammunition loads increased because the U.S. infantrymen now held a semi-automatic rifle. That single fact, the M1 Garand, changed everything else. It changed ammo loads, it changed pouch design, it changed weight distribution, it changed firepower per man, and it changed the doctrine of how American infantry fought. The WW2 uniform, M1941 and M1943 system. In early war, 1942 to 1943, the standard field jacket was the M1941. It looked neat, it looked sharp, it looked like something you could wear in civilian life. But the M1941 was not good in war. It was thin, lightly lined, and in wet or cold climates, it failed miserably. Soldiers in Italy, in mountains, rain, cold, absolutely hated the M1941. The M1941 jacket weighed about 2.5 pounds.
The U.S. Army realized it needed something better. Not pretty, just functional. Out of that came the M1943 field jacket system. More pockets, better cut, better layering. This M1943 jacket weighed around 3.5 pounds, and it was more durable. It became the template for decades of U.S. field jackets after World War II. The trousers changed too, from WW1-style breeches to straight-leg trousers, because WW2 mobility doctrine assumed distance marching, jungle fighting, urban fighting, not trench warfare. Straight-leg pants are easier to move in, easier to tuck, easier to maintain. Boots. WW2 saw the introduction of better boots, rough-out leather service shoes, later double-buckle combat boots. This was a major improvement over WW1. Cushioning was still primitive by modern standards, but much better than WW1. Soldiers were less likely to suffer catastrophic blister problems during long marches. Helmets. The WW2 soldier wore the M1 helmet, one of the most iconic individual pieces of gear in military history. M1 helmet weight, approximately 2.85 pounds, helmet plus liner. That is significantly heavier than the WW1 M1917 helmet, but the shape offered far more side protection. That shows doctrinal shift. WW2 expected rifle bullets, fragments from all angles, not just overhead. The helmet was deeper, more bowl-shaped, more protective. The liner allowed better comfort and fit. Load-bearing web gear in WW2. The web equipment changed from the rigid haversack paradigm of WW1 to a more modular system. Key components: M1928 haversack or M1944-45 pack system, web belt, suspenders, ammo pouches, bayonet scabbard, canteen plus cup, first aid pouch, and optionally gas mask bag, but often carried less centrally than WW1. The flexibility of WW2 web gear allowed soldiers to discard or rearrange gear according to conditions. Soldiers could add extra pouches. They could adjust distribution over shoulders instead of waist only. That improved load management.
The M1 Garand, the core weapon. Weapon weight, approximately 9.5 pounds unloaded. Also carried 8-round on-block clips. Typical ammo load, 80 to 120 rounds. Ammo weight, approximately 5.4 pounds for 96 rounds. That is heavier than WW1 ammunition load, because semi-automatic fire means more rounds fired per minute, so soldiers carried more. The soldiers' fighting load in WW2 increased ammo mass per man to feed increased firepower. Secondary weapon. Some riflemen carried bayonet. Some carried M1911.45 ACP pistols, 2.5 pounds loaded, and sometimes M1 carbine. Squad power shift, the BAR.
One of the biggest differences between WW1 and WW2 infantry squads was the introduction of internal squad automatic firepower, the Browning automatic rifle. BAR M1918A2 weight, approximately 19.4 pounds unloaded. BAR magazines, 20 rounds, 30.06. Typical BAR gunner carried 8 to 12 magazines, 160 to 240 rounds. Ammo weight, approximately 12 to 18 pounds. This means BAR gunners routinely carried 45 to 55 plus pounds of weapon plus ammo before adding their personal gear. BAR gunners were physically punished by their equipment, but the squad's firepower skyrocketed. In WW1, firepower was concentrated in machine gun companies. In WW2, firepower was embedded into the squad. That is one of the biggest tactical revolutions of WW2 infantry. Grenades were standardized. The M2 fragmentation grenade, and later M2A1, and then the famous Mark II pineapple grenade. Soldiers often carried 2 to 4 grenades in combat. Grenade weight, 21 ounces, or 1.3 pounds. Grenades are heavy, and cumulative weight matters. Gas mask. Gas was not used widely in WW2, but early war equipment still issued respirators because of fear that gas would return. In North Africa, Italy, early Normandy, soldiers often carried masks for months without ever needing them. This is dead weight, but doctrine could not ignore gas threat. Rations. The ration system improved dramatically. Instead of WW1's very heavy canned rations, WW2 introduced C-ration, canned but compact. K-ration, lighter, designed for paratroopers and assault troops. D-ration, emergency chocolate bar calorie packs. This meant rations were now designed for mission profiles. A paratrooper needed light rations. Armored infantry needed high-calorie compact rations. The equipment system evolved from an industrial logic, not tradition.
Now, what does the total weight look like? Let's break down typical WW2 infantryman loads. Rifle plus bayonet, 10.5 pounds. Ammo, 96 rounds, 5.4 pounds. Helmet, 2.85 pounds. Uniform plus boots, 8 to 9 pounds. Web gear plus pouches, 3 to 5 pounds. Grenades, 2 pieces, 2.6 pounds. Canteen full, 2.3 pounds. First aid, 0.3 pounds. Rations, 1-day K ration, 2.3 pounds. Total fighting load, not full pack, approximately 35 to 40 pounds. With full pack, extra clothes, etc., 60 to 72 pounds. So the WW2 American soldier, in weight terms, is not drastically different from WW2 weight of around 60 pounds, but the content of weight is very different and far more optimized toward firepower. WW1 weight was wool, canned food, haversack, and gas mask. WW2 weight was ammo, grenades, rations optimized, and modular webbing. And that is the difference. The WW2 American soldier was designed to shoot and to move. The equipment was not perfect, but it was engineered with purpose. Doctrine drives equipment. WW1 doctrine was trench static warfare. WW2 doctrine was maneuver and fire, plus squad organic firepower. Therefore, equipment reflects more ammo, more grenades, mass production, semi-automatic rifles, better load distribution, better boots, and improved helmets.
The industrial logic behind World War II gear. The U.S. industrial base of World War II mass-produced soldier kit at an unimaginable scale. Wool trousers, millions. Field jackets, 3.5 million. Steel helmets, over 22 million. M1 Garands, over 5 million. BARs, over 188,000. M1 carbines, over 6 million. In World War I, supply was limited. In World War II, supply was abundant. That abundance allowed soldiers to carry more ammo,
more grenades, more rations. That abundance is central to understanding World War II American equipment. It existed because America could mass produce it. Why World War II soldier gear matters in history. The World War II American infantryman is the reference point for most modern soldier comparison, not World War I. Because by World War II, the fundamental variables are similar to today. Automatic fire capability. Sort of. Garand is semi-auto. Squad internal machine support. BAR. Modular-ish load system. Steel protective helmet. Lighter rations. When modern historians compare soldier load over time, they often choose World War II as the baseline. One of the most important truths about U.S. infantry in World War II, and one that most documentaries completely ignore, is that there was no such thing as the standard American soldier load. That phrase is misleading. It implies uniformity. It implies homogeneity. But reality was the opposite. By 1944-1945, the U.S. infantry squad was not a uniform set of men with identical rifles and identical pouches. It was a weapon ecosystem. It was a deliberately constructed micro-unit combining different weapon types, different ammo types, different weights, and different tactical functions. In World War I, nearly all infantrymen in a platoon had essentially the same type of weapon, a bolt-action rifle. Machine guns existed, but they were not integrated down to squad level. But World War II, especially for the U.S., is where specialization becomes formal doctrine. The WW2 U.S. Army Infantry Squad is already a composite combined arms team in miniature, and that means equipment was fragmented into roles. There was the rifleman, the corps shooter, the standard soldier. There was the barman, the firebase, the automatic suppressor. There was the Thompson SMG man, the assault specialist, close quarters killer. There was the sniper, long-range precision specialist. There was the engineer, demo expert, explosives burden carrier. And there was the airborne paratrooper, carrying more gear than almost any other foot soldier in WW2, because he had to jump with his gear and fight immediately after landing. Those 6 categories produced 6 different equipment realities. So in this part, we analyze each one separately, because only then can the audience understand why WW2 infantry equipment was not one single blueprint, but a menu of configurations. The rifleman, the baseline combat load. The rifleman is the default case most people imagine in their mind. The M1 Garand in hand, M1 928 haversack, cartridge belt, steel helmet, canteen, shovel, grenades. This was the statistically dominant type of infantryman. We already defined the 60 to 72 pounds full load in Part 3. But here's the key. The rifleman's load is the lowest weight of all WW2 combat roles inside infantry. His weapon is mid-weight. His ammo load is moderate. He doesn't carry heavy bandoliers for others, unless assigned to resupply a bar gunner. He doesn't carry demolition charges. He doesn't carry sniper optics. He doesn't carry radio batteries. He is the median weight man. If the rifleman is at 100% load baseline, then other roles go beyond him. So think of the rifleman as the anchor number.
The BAR gunner, the weight punishment role. The BAR, Browning Automatic Rifle, is the equipment that turns the rifle squad into a firepower creature. The BAR is the machine inside the squad. Without the BAR, the U.S. squad becomes dramatically less effective because the BAR is what pins down enemy positions, keeps heads down, forces movement, but the price is weight. The BAR gunner's weapon alone weighs around 19.4 pounds, unloaded, nearly double a Garand. Then add loaded mags in pouches. 8 to 12 magazines is realistic. Weight of one BAR magazine loaded, approximately 1 pound. 8 mags, approximately 8 pounds. 12 mags, approximately 12 pounds. So weapon plus ammo equals approximately 31 pounds just for the fire system. Then add the same standard items every infantryman carries: helmet, uniform, shovel, canteen, first aid, and grenade. That means a BAR gunner often carried 80 to 95 pounds in practice, not 60 to 72 pounds. That extra 20 pounds is a life penalty. And now we must mention one more hidden variable. BAR gunners often carried spare parts kit, cleaning gear, and sometimes additional barrels. Not always, but depends on platoon supply condition. So when you ask World War II BAR gunners after the war, what was it like to carry the BAR? Almost universally the answer is the same: heavy. But the infantry squad accepted that weight penalty because the BAR was the squad's hammer.
The Thompson Man, the close quarters specialist. The Thompson submachine gun is iconic, but it is also very heavy for a weapon of its class. Thompson weight loaded, around 11 pounds. That is heavier than the M1 Garand. This surprises many people. People imagine submachine guns as small, lightweight, modern, but the Thompson was a brick of milled steel. It was expensive, precise machining, heavy. Ammo for the Thompson is also heavy, because .45 ACP rounds are much larger than 9mm rounds. A Thompson gunner often carried 6 to 10 magazines. Thompson belt pouches help distribute it, but you feel it. So a Thompson SMG soldier would often carry weight similar to a BAR assistant gunner, often 70 to 85 pounds depending on load. The Thompson soldier was typically assigned to close-range assault roles, clearing buildings, clearing trenches, clearing bunkers, clearing rooms, clearing hedgerows. That meant more grenades, more explosive responsibility, more risk. The sniper, the specialist, precision man. The sniper's load is different again. He carries a Springfield M1903 or M1903A4 with scope, 9 pounds approx. Optics, scope equals around 0.75 pounds extra. Extra cleaning gear, extra protective case for optics, usually fewer grenades, usually lower ammo load than riflemen, to reduce weight and maintain stealth. Snipers often carried less weight than barmen, but the mental load is different. Snipers must control movement, avoid noise, avoid metal clinks, avoid entanglement. So snipers sometimes stripped gear down more than any other specialty to maintain stealth. Sniper load weight often around 60 to 68 pounds, similar to standard riflemen, but configured differently.
The engineer, the demolition and dangerous load man. Engineers carried one thing nobody else carried in large quantity: explosives. TNT block weight example, about 1 pound per block. Composition B block, similar class weight. Satchel charges could be 10 to 20 pounds depending on filling. Engineers also carried wire cutters, blasting caps, fuse, pliers, tools, sometimes mines, 7 to 8 pounds per mine. Engineers often carried 80 to 100 plus pounds in assault operations. Engineers in Normandy who cleared hedgerows using explosive Bangalore torpedoes were carrying extreme loads. Engineering loads were mission-dependent, but generally some of the heaviest loads of all infantry sub-roles. The paratrooper, the most overloaded World War II infantry type. The airborne soldier is the most overloaded infantry category in World War II. Paratroopers jumped with their equipment, on their body, in harness, and had to fight moments after landing. And because airborne operations drop men into isolation, cut off from supply, the paratrooper must carry more of everything at the start: extra ammo, extra grenades, extra rations, extra socks, knives, sometimes additional weapons. Many carried carbines and pistols, or Garand and pistol. The weight of the parachute rig alone is brutal. T5 main parachute pack weight, approximately 30 pounds. Reserve chute weight, approximately 12 pounds. So just chute gear, approximately 42 pounds, before weapons, before web gear, before rations. Then add M1 Garand, 9.5 pounds unloaded, ammo, approximately 5.4 pounds, grenades, approximately 2.6 to 5 pounds if multiple, haversack, canteen, uniform, helmet. Total jump load was often 90 to 120 plus pounds. Paratroopers in Normandy jumped in the night of June 6, 1944, with some of the heaviest combat loads carried by any foot soldier of the era. Some paratroopers carried machine guns. Some paratroopers carried bazooka rounds. Some paratroopers carried demolition charges. Some even taped extra ammo around their legs. So the modern 21st century soldier carrying 90 to 120 pounds is not new. The airborne soldier in WW2 already carried that range. The difference is WW2 weight equals ammo plus food plus weapons plus parachute. Modern weight equals armor plus electronics plus batteries plus optics. Different weight composition, same human suffering. Why specialization matters in this documentary. The audience must understand the WW2 American soldier was not one template. He was a system of roles. Imagine a spectrum. Lowest weight to rifleman, mid-weight to sniper, higher weight to Thompson gunner, heavy to BAR gunner, extreme to airborne and engineers. This matters because when you calculate average soldier load and say WW2 soldier carried 60 pounds, you mislead. That is a median, not a full picture. The real range of WW2 infantry weights runs from 50 pounds to 120 pounds. Same war, same uniforms, same boots, same helmets, but different roles, different burdens. And while WW2 did not have modern ceramic plates, night vision, or lithium battery radio systems, it had something else: mass weapons in the squad. The Americans built a squad that is a weapon platform, not a group of equal men. And that, more than anything, is the true revolution of WW2 equipment philosophy. The U.S. Army in WW2 is the Army that formalized the principle: a squad is not 10 rifles. A squad is a fire ecosystem. One man carries the hammer, the BAR. One man carries the surgical knife, the sniper rifle. One man carries the shotgun of close range, the Thompson. The rifleman supports them all. And the airborne is the extreme load case, the soldier as a munitions mule. We are still in the Europe theater, but now we are in 1944 to 1945. The soldier now is no longer theoretical like a training camp soldier. He is not 1942 Tunisia. He is not even 1943 Sicily. He is late war, hedgerows, the Hürtgen forest, the Ardennes, Cologne, Remagen, the Ruhr. And this is important because late war kit, it really changed from what the quartermaster intended. It is fashionable now online to talk about WW2 American logistic superiority, but at squad level, late 1944, a GI in the European theater sometimes looked like an exhausted pack mule. So here is the baseline. By mid-1944, the average American infantryman in Europe often walked with 72 to 82 pounds of kit on his body, before rations and before ammo resupply weight, also not including the weight he might add by picking German gear, captured trophy equipment, or local improvisations.
72 to 82 pounds. That's roughly 2 bowling balls more than the same man usually carried in North Africa. His uniform changed too. Many soldiers now wore the M1943 field uniform. This was a massive improvement over early war M1941 jackets, but it also meant new pockets, new cargo spaces, and that often meant that soldiers loaded those pockets with more items. Carrying capacity begets weight. In war, every empty pocket eventually gets filled. The M1943 uniform. This uniform is a perfect example of how the U.S. Army basically iterated in real time. The early war M1941 jacket
Parsons' jacket was a light windbreaker. It looked nice. It looked neat. It was a stylish jacket, almost civilian, but it was not good in mud, rain, and cold. American soldiers in Italy complained incessantly. There is even a statistic in an OSS internal morale report in early 1944 that complaints about clothing and footwear spiked 24% more often in infantry divisions than armor divisions, mainly due to the infantry's higher time exposure to weather. So the M43 uniform came in. Late 1944, American infantry in France, Belgium, and Germany, the soldiers that fought Normandy, the Siegfried Line, the Ardennes, Cologne, that soldier wore the M43 field jacket, M43 trousers, a better layered system, better pockets. The M43 jacket itself weighed around 3.5 pounds dry. With mud, it easily went over 4.2 to 4.7 pounds. GI boots also improved. M43 boots sometimes weighed around 3.2 pounds per pair, dry, but with water and mud, easily another pound heavier. And this is a repeating theme. The US ETO soldier is heavier because the environment is heavier. The hedgerow problem changed loads. Normandy hedgerows forced Americans to carry specialized demolition and breaching equipment. The famous Rhino tanks solved some of it, but infantry still had to carry extra Bangalore torpedoes, extra prepared explosive packets, Composition C, TNT blocks, and extra anti-tank rifle grenades. Late June 1944, rifle companies often reported that riflemen carried 4 to 6 rifle grenades instead of 2 to 3. Each rifle grenade was 10 to 17 ounces depending on type. That is an extra 2.5 to 4.5 pounds on top of basic load. This is why the European theater rifleman's weight in summer 1944 is higher than the textbook quartermaster manual.
Ammunition load changed with fear of German armor. Even without a tank immediately visible, the fear of German panzers influenced load planning. In U.S. Army ETO notes, AGF Infantry Board Internal Summary, soldiers in certain rifle companies in 2nd Infantry Division and 9th Infantry Division often carried up to 96 rounds more than issued just because German counterattacks were unpredictable. 96 rounds of .3006 M2 ball ammunition weighs approximately 5 pounds, so now we have 5 more pounds just because he is afraid of running out. Grenades. The official M1 fragmentation grenade weighed 21 ounces, but late-war soldiers often carried 4 to 6 grenades each. That's 5.25 to 7.8 pounds just in frags. Early war doctrine expected maybe 2 grenades per rifleman. Late war often doubled or tripled that. More water. Summer 1944 in France was humid, hot, and constant heavy physical strain. Many soldiers carried 2 canteens, 2 one-quart canteens. That's 2 extra pounds of water. Again, the ETO soldier used new load logic that did not exist at quartermaster planning stage. Entrenching tools. The E-tool went from T-handle to folding type. The folding shovel, 1943, weighed roughly 2.5 pounds with cover. Because of hedgerows, foxhole digging, and constant defensive posture during the Ardennes, soldiers always carried it. In Sicily or Tunisia, soldiers sometimes gambled and left it behind. In the Hurtgen Forest? No. They carried it no matter what.
Submachine guns increased, heavier ammo belts too. In late 1944, the ETO rifle squad ratio of SMGs increased drastically. The Thompson M1A1 weighed about 10.5 pounds loaded. The M3 grease gun weighed about 8 pounds loaded, but .45 ACP ammo weighed much more per shot than .3006 by volume. An extra SMG use pushed more weight. In a rifle squad in 1944, 2 to 3 SMGs per squad was common, even though official TONE still said only squad leader got 1. And those SMG carriers often carried more magazines, often 4 to 6 mags, each mag about 1.3 pounds loaded for Thompson. Soldiers complained the Thompson mags rattled, so some taped cloth around mags. That cloth tape added trivial weight, but it demonstrates how much soldiers modified gear to environment. Infantry sometimes wore German boots. It is an uncomfortable historical reality. American infantry sometimes privately preferred German jackboots for mud conditions. German leather jackboots were excellent in forest mud. They were heavy, but kept water out better. So weight, again, increased. There is even an anecdotal estimate from 90th Infantry Division in late 44 that about 7 to 11% of infantry in some companies wore at least one piece of German clothing when conditions got extreme. Winter changed everything. Ardennes weight spike. The Battle of the Bulge winter kit made soldiers heavier than at any point in the war. Wool sweater plus M41 jacket or M43 jacket plus greatcoat sometimes, plus scarves plus overshoes equals this could add 6 to 8 more pounds of clothing weight, especially if wet or frozen. Overshoes could weigh up to 4 pounds, when wet and frozen sometimes more. So the average winter ETO soldier in December 1944 could easily hit 82 to 90 pounds, and some riflemen indirectly hit 95 plus pounds when carrying defensive load plus extra ammo before a German attack.
Rifle load in 1944 versus WW1 1918 versus modern 2020. Here is another comparison table for clarity. Soldier era. Typical carried weight, combat loaded. 1918 U.S. soldier, WW1, 55 to 60 pounds. 1942 Tunisia, GI, 55 to 65 pounds. 1944 to 45, ETO, GI, 72 to 90 pounds. Modern U.S. infantry 2020, 90 to 120 pounds. So ironically, the late war American soldier was actually closer to a modern soldier than to his 1942 self. Bazooka team weight. The M1A1 bazooka weighed 15 pounds. Later, the M9 bazooka weighed 14.3 pounds. A single M6 rocket weighed 3.5 pounds. Bazooka teams often carried 6 to 10 rounds. That's an additional 21 to 35 pounds for the ammo man. So a bazooka team man could be 85 to 110 pounds total weight, which is basically the same as a modern U.S. soldier in Afghanistan 2010 with full plates, ammunition, and water. Thompson versus M1 Garand versus BAR weight comparison. For every 100 riflemen, maybe 8 or 9 had BARs, but the BAR gunner load is insane. M1918A2 BAR, 19.4 pounds with bipod, 12 magazines times 20 rounds, 30-06, each mag 1.35 pounds, 16 pounds ammo, spare parts, plus cleaning kit, plus asbestos glove, plus sling, 2 pounds. So the BAR gunner could be walking with nearly 38 pounds just in weapon plus ammo, before anything else. This is why the BAR role was physically brutal.
The Hurtgen Forest Effect. The Hurtgen Forest battles, September to December 1944, are significant because they were attrition combat in rain and cold. Hurtgen is a case study of maximum weight plus minimum speed plus maximum fatigue. Trees blocked wind so could not dry clothes. Soldiers' coats and wool trousers sometimes weighed 2 to 4 pounds more from water retention. Mud in boots could add a literal 1 pound. Dirt inside pockets added ounces. None of this seems like much, but in real movement, it mattered. The U.S. soldier late 1944 was not ultra-mobile. He was overloaded. Popular mythology says U.S. infantry moved fast, but only motorized transport moved fast. Foot infantry was burdened by late war loads, and psychosocially, the fear of German counterattacks, especially fear of tanks and MG-34 or MG-42, influenced soldiers to carry more ammo than the quartermaster or the TONE specified. This is a psychological factor directly tied to load. German MG-42 produced 1,200 rounds per minute. German Panzerfaust could appear from the woods 40 meters ahead. So the American soldier overloaded because psychologically he needed to carry more than doctrine. Fear equals weight. The later stages, Cologne, Remagen, Ruhr. Once Americans crossed the Rhine, by March 1945, mechanization increased and some weight shifted to trucks. But the soldier himself still carried heavy loads, but now more often rode trucks into initial positions. Yet urban combat in Cologne again meant heavier ammo loads per man. Again, weight is proportional to environment. Summary of this entire part: late war ETO soldier, summer 1944, spring 1945, is the highest weight infantryman of the entire Second World War in U.S. service. He is heavier than earlier Americans. He is heavier than WW1 Americans. He is almost equal to modern Americans in Afghanistan in 2010 in load weight. The U.S. soldier in Normandy, the Hurtgen Forest, the Ardennes, and the Ruhr carried a load that was scientifically, physiologically, and historically excessive, but necessary, because German defensive weapons and European weather forced that evolution. He is not the beautiful cinematic soldier Hollywood shows. He is a tired, soaked, overweight load infantryman in one of the most logistics-dense armies in history. When we enter the Pacific theater, the visual changes immediately. The environment itself, dense jungle canopy, coral atolls, volcanic slopes, monsoon weather, becomes an active variable. What a soldier carries cannot be copy-pasted from Europe. The U.S. soldier in the Pacific was not simply a GI wearing shorts with a rifle. That cartoon simplification, that is a Hollywood meme. The reality is more analytical, more technical, and more contradictory. The Pacific GI carried less wool, less cold weather gear, but more water and more grenades. A typical U.S. infantryman in the Solomon Islands in 1942-43 often carried less clothing weight than his European counterpart. Wool trousers, heavy field jackets, greatcoats. Those items made no sense in tropical jungle. Soldiers often preferred lighter herringbone twill uniforms. An HBT shirt weighed about 1.3 to 1.5 pounds. HBT trousers were about 1.4 to 1.6 pounds. Compared to M1943 European trousers, often 2+ pounds, this is lighter. Boots were also lighter. The rough-out service shoes with canvas leggings weighed about 3 pounds per pair dry. But in mud and saturated conditions in Bougainville and New Guinea, these boots absorbed water, so weight difference often neutralized. But however, the key substitution in the Pacific is water. Where a soldier in France sometimes carried 2 quarts, in many Pacific campaigns, infantry often carried double that if they could, 2 to 4 quarts. That is 4 to 8 pounds of water alone. So, he reduces wool weight but increases water weight. Net weight reallocated.
Malaria discipline equals heavy medical load. The enemy in the Pacific was not only the Japanese army, the other enemy was the mosquito. In 1943, 85% of all U.S. Army soldiers on Guadalcanal contracted malaria at some point during the campaign. This is an insane statistic. Malaria casualties dwarfed bullet casualties. As a result, Pacific soldiers often carried mosquito net, around 0.8 pounds dry, atabrine timelets issued daily, more insect repellent, more socks, rot prevention, fungus-destroyed feet. These medical and preventative items are invisible in Hollywood photos, but they were weight that European theater soldiers often did not carry in such quantity. The Pacific combat load about 60 to 70 pounds typically. The Pacific GI was not as heavy as the ETO winter rifleman. He averaged about 60 to 70 pounds. He could go higher, but the nature of amphibious landings limited weight. Landing craft doctrine required lighter initial assault waves. You cannot jump off a Higgins boat into surf, into coral fractures, carrying 90 pounds. Marines learned this in blood. Army divisions learned the same later. Weight kills mobility in surf, so the first waves carried minimal non-combat gear. But this does not mean light load, it means specific load. Bayonet usage in close combat weight logic. Jungle combat was close range, 15 to 40 meters visibility. And because Japanese soldiers often favored infiltration, night attacks, and bonsai charges, The American soldier often carried more grenades and more bayonet emphasis. In Pacific Infantry Training Film summaries from 1944, average riflemen carried 5 to 7 grenades in some engagements. That is around 6.5 to 9.2 pounds. By comparison, Sicily riflemen often carried 2 to 3 grenades.
M1 Garand, same rifle, different wear factor. The rifle remained the same. M1 Garand, 9.5 pounds. But humidity and constant moisture meant more cleaning gear carried. Rust and jam risk increased. Japanese soldiers sometimes oiled their Arisaka rifles with animal fat. Americans carried more small oil bottles. So, small weight, but symbolic. Maintenance weight goes up. Flamethrowers and satchel charges. The Pacific signature weight. The Pacific was the definitive combat laboratory for the M2 flamethrower. It weighed approximately 70 pounds fully loaded. A flamethrower operator in a Marine company or Army regiment might weigh only 150 pounds himself, yet carried a rig nearly half his body weight, and satchel charges for bunker clearing weighed approximately 8 to 12 pounds each. Soldiers assaulting caves often carried multiple. So again, Pacific weight logic differs. Not all riflemen carry huge gear, but some specialists carry insane specialist loads. The heaviest single-roll load of any U.S. infantryman in WW2 is arguably the flamethrower operator in the Pacific, even heavier than the BAR gunner. Tropical fabric evolution. The American tropical uniform evolved faster than the European one. The Pacific required change faster because climate forced rapid iteration. Early war, 1942. HBT two-pocket shirt with 5-button fly trousers. No lower cargo pocket. Mid-war, 1943. Longer HBT shirts, lighter shade, pocket reinforcements. Late war, 1944. Marines had P-44 uniforms with large cargo pockets, modern style, because Marines understood jungle pocket storage necessity faster than the Army bureaucracy. The Army eventually adopted M43 field gear globally, but Marines in the Pacific had earlier cargo logic. Cargo pockets equal more weight, more places to put grenades, more tendency to fill them, because when you have room, you use it.
Personal items. Lighter but different category weight. In the Pacific, many soldiers carried small personal waterproof bag, rubberized, photographs, cigarettes, heavy habit due to stress and boredom, and cigarettes weigh real ounces. Sometimes small dry socks in doubled waxed paper. Socks are life in the Pacific. The quartermaster said 3 pairs. Marine veterans say 6 pairs if possible. 6 pairs equals 1.8 pounds more than 3 pairs. Again, socks are weight, but socks in the Pacific are like ammunition in the Ardennes. They keep you alive. Rifle grenades and bazooka loads changed drastically in island battles. Japanese tanks were rare, so no constant anti-tank fear. Thus, fewer rifle grenades, fewer bazooka rounds compared to Normandy. But satchel charges for cave clearing replaced them. So weight distribution again changed. Less anti-tank, more bunker killers. Pacific versus Europe weight summary. Theater, average rifleman weight load. Europe, late 44 to 45, 72 to 90 pounds. Pacific, 42 to 45, 60 to 75 pounds. But do not let that fool you. The Pacific soldier is not lighter equals easier. The Pacific soldier carries a weight that actively fights him. Humidity, heat, mold, trench foot, jungle rot, all increase fatigue. Every calorie burned in heat is more expensive. His environment makes every pound harder. The Pacific American soldier is not better or worse. He is different. His equipment reflects a war that is closer range, amphibious, disease-heavy, bunker-dense, flame weapon intensive. His jungle load is optimized not for hedgerows, but for swamps and caves. His comfort items are not sweaters, but dry socks. His survival items are not overshoes, but mosquito nets. His extra ammunition is not anti-tank rifle grenades, but fragmentation grenades for night infiltration.
His enemy's signature is not the MG42 pillbox, but the camouflaged cave, and that force transforms load logic. When we enter the Pacific Theater, the visual changes immediately. The environment itself, dense jungle canopy, coral atolls, volcanic slopes, monsoon weather, becomes an active variable. What a soldier carries cannot be copy-pasted from Europe. The American soldier in the Pacific was not simply a GI wearing shorts with a rifle. That cartoon simplification, that is a Hollywood meme. The reality is more analytical, more technical, and more contradictory. The Pacific GI is lighter in some categories, heavier in others, and here is the key. His priorities are different. His war is dominated not by artillery density and hedgerows like in Normandy, but by heat, humidity, rot, malaria fragments, amphibious landings, supply inconsistencies, Japanese infiltration tactics, and close-range combat where visibility is measured in meters instead of hundreds of yards. So let's analyze him properly. Pacific soldier carried less wool, less cold-weather gear, but more water and more grenades. A typical U.S. infantryman in the Solomon Islands in 1942 to 1943 often carried less clothing weight than his European counterpart. Wool trousers, heavy field jackets, greatcoats, those items made no sense in tropical jungle. Soldiers often preferred lighter herringbone twill uniforms. An HBT shirt weighed about 1.3 to 1.5 pounds. HBT trousers were about 1.4 to 1.6 pounds, compared to M1943 European trousers, often about 2+ pounds. This is lighter. Boots were also lighter. The rough-out service shoes with canvas leggings weighed about 3 pounds per pair, dry. But in mud and saturated conditions in Bougainville and New Guinea, these boots absorbed water, so weight difference often neutralized. However, the key substitution in the Pacific is water. Where a soldier in France sometimes carried 1 to 2 quarts, in many Pacific campaigns, infantry often carried double that if they could, 2 to 4 quarts. That is 4 to 8 pounds of water alone. So he reduces wool weight, but increases water weight. Net, weight reallocated.
Malaria discipline equals heavy medical load. The enemy in the Pacific was not only the Japanese army, the other enemy was the mosquito. In 1943, 85% of all U.S. Army soldiers on Guadalcanal contracted malaria at some point during the campaign. This is an insane statistic. Malaria casualties dwarfed bullet casualties. As a result, Pacific soldiers often carried mosquito net, 0.8 pounds dry, Atabrine tablets issued daily, more insect repellent, more socks, rot prevention, fungus-destroyed feet. These medical and preventative items are invisible in Hollywood photos, but they were weight that European theater soldiers often did not carry in such quantity. The Pacific combat load, about 60 to 70 pounds typically. The Pacific GI was not as heavy as the ETO Winter Rifleman. He averaged about 60 to 70 pounds. He could go higher, but the nature of amphibious landings limited weight. Landing craft doctrine required lighter initial assault waves. You cannot jump off a Higgins boat into surf, into coral fractures, carrying 90 pounds. Marines learned this in blood. Army divisions learned the same later. Weight kills mobility in surf. So the first waves carried minimal non-combat gear. But this does not mean light load. It means specific load. Bayonet usage and close combat weight logic. Jungle combat was close range, 15 to 40 meters visibility. And because Japanese soldiers often favored infiltration, night attacks, and banzai charges, the American soldier often carried more grenades and more bayonet emphasis. In Pacific infantry training film summaries from 1944, average riflemen carried 5 to 7 grenades in some engagements. That is around 6.5 to 9.2 pounds. By comparison, Sicily riflemen
often carried 2 to 3 grenades. M1 Garand, same rifle, but different wear factors. The rifle remained the same, M1 9.5 pounds, but humidity and constant moisture meant more cleaning gear carried. Rust and jam risk increased. Japanese soldiers sometimes oiled their Arisaka rifles with animal fat. Americans carried more small oil bottles. So, small weight, but symbolic. Maintenance weight goes up.
Flamethrowers and satchel charges, the Pacific signature weight. The Pacific was the definitive combat laboratory for the M2 flamethrower. It weighed approximately 70 pounds fully loaded. A flamethrower operator in a Marine company or Army regiment might weigh only 150 pounds himself, yet carried a rig nearly half his body weight. And satchel charges for bunker clearing weighed 8 to 12 pounds each. Soldiers assaulting caves often carried multiple. So again, Pacific weight logic differs. Not all riflemen carry huge gear, but some specialists carry insane specialist loads. The heaviest single roll load of any U.S. infantryman in World War II is arguably the flamethrower operator in the Pacific, even heavier than the bar gunner. Tropical fabric evolution. The American tropical uniform evolved faster than the European one. The Pacific required change faster because climate forced rapid iteration. Early war 1942, HBT 2-pocket shirt plus 5-button fly trousers, no lower cargo pockets. Mid-war 1943, longer HBT shirts, lighter shade, pocket reinforcements. Late war 1944, Marine P-44 uniforms had large cargo pockets, modern style, because Marines understood jungle pocket storage necessity faster than the Army bureaucracy. The Army eventually adopted M43 field gear globally, but Marines in the Pacific had earlier cargo logic. Cargo pockets equal more weight, more places to put grenades, more tendency to fill them, because when you have room, you use it. Cartridge belts and bar belts differ in the Pacific. The Pacific riflemen often carried fewer bandoliers because resupply sometimes arrived more frequently in small bursts via amphibious transports, but at same time, in assault waves, he carried more grenades and more water. The bar gunner in the Pacific often carried fewer magazines than his European counterpart, sometimes 8 instead of 12, precisely because weight in surf and climbing volcanic slopes made full load unmanageable. So ammo weight distribution drops a bit, but grenade weight increases, so total weight stays approximately similar. Again, Pacific weight is redistributed.
Japanese infiltration in night tactics changed carried items. The Japanese Army specialized in infiltration at night, not mass frontal night attacks. Hollywood got that wrong. Instead, small units crawled close to U.S. foxholes, then attacked suddenly, knife, grenade, bayonet range. So American soldiers in the Pacific often carried these items even more than ETO. Extra knife, K-bar type for Marines, extra flashlight battery, more flares, extra trip flares if possible, more personal illumination control gear. This is not heavy individually, but adds up to 2 pounds. And again, ETO soldiers rarely carried extra knives or extra flashlight batteries. The Pacific soldiers' mental weight changed load logic as much as physical conditions. There is a psychological formula in the Pacific. Fear of disease plus fear of ambush plus fear of dehydration equals more water plus more grenades. Fear creates weight. Coral islands equal odd footwear adaptations. On Tarawa, coral fragments shredded boots. Soldiers sometimes wrapped cloth strips around boots like improvised leggings. Some wore canvas jungle shoes with more flexible soles. These shoes weighed less, but wore out faster, so they carried a backup pair, sometimes tied to the pack. A backup pair of shoes weighs about 2.5 pounds. Many amphibious veterans insisted on carrying them anyway. This is an example of equipment weight driven by learned environmental lessons, not quartermaster doctrine. Personal items, lighter but different category weight. In the Pacific, many soldiers carried A small personal waterproof bag, rubberized, photographs, cigarettes, heavy habit due to stress and boredom, and cigarettes weigh real ounces. Sometimes small dry socks in doubled waxed paper. Socks are life in the Pacific. The quartermaster said 3 pairs. Marine veterans say 6 pairs if possible. 6 pairs equals approximately 1.8 pounds more than 3 pairs. Again, socks are weight, but socks in the Pacific are like ammunition in the Ardennes. They keep you alive.
Body armor, the weight elephant. A WW2 GI wore steel M1 helmet, approximately 2.85 pounds. Cloth uniform, 0 ballistic plates. A modern U.S. Army infantryman in 2020 wears ACH or ECH helmet, Advanced Combat Helmet or Enhanced Combat Helmet, approximately 3.3 pounds. Plate carrier, approximately 4 to 6 pounds empty. SAPI or ESAPI plates, 4 plates equals 18 to 22 pounds depending size. Helmet weight is similar, but ballistic plate weight is totally new category. Total armor weight is typically 22 to 30 pounds. That is equivalent to carrying 3 to 4 M1 Garands just in armor. Armor is the biggest difference. The modern American soldier is heavy mainly because he is bulletproof in ways the WW2 GI was not. Ammo weight, surprisingly similar. Soldier with M1 Garand 1944 carried 96 to 112 rounds typical in belt plus bandoliers. That's roughly 5 to 6 pounds of ammo. Modern soldier with M4 and 7 magazines equals 210 rounds. 5.56 NATO ammo weight, approximately 12 grams per cartridge. That makes 210 rounds, approximately 2.7 kilograms, equals 6 pounds. So ammunition weight is almost identical. This is one of the strangest comparisons in the entire history of infantry load, because through all the evolution, the weight of ammunition per soldier did not explode. In fact, because of lighter cartridge weight, modern soldier can carry more rounds with same weight. WW2 rifleman, 80 to 100 rounds typical. Modern rifleman, 180 to 240 rounds typical. Weight, same category, 5 to 7 pounds. So, heavy load problems today are not from ammo. Heavy load problems today are from armor plus electronics.
Electronics, the battery revolution. Modern soldier carries radio, PTT switch, maybe an ISR receiver, GPS or dagger, NVGs, IR laser pointer on the rifle, sometimes thermal sight, sometimes small tablet. Every electronics item needs batteries. In Afghanistan, some soldiers carried 10 to 15 pounds of batteries alone. A modern ANPVS-14 NOD weighs about 0.78 pounds. The battery pack adds 0.2 pounds. A soldier sometimes carried 2 or 3 spare battery sets. Add a PEQ-15 IR laser-on rifle, about 0.38 pounds. Add a flashlight, about 0.27 pounds. Add a backup headlamp, about 0.25 pounds. All these fractions accumulate. The modern soldier became a walking network node, and network nodes require power. So the modern soldier's weight is basically World War II weight plus electronics plus body armor. The rifle weight, M4 versus Garand versus modern attachments. M4A1 rifle weighs about 6.5 pounds empty, with optic, laser, and light typically 8.2 to 9.3 pounds. Garand was 9.5 pounds empty. So modern rifle with attachments weighs almost exactly the same as Garand, or slightly lighter. The rifle itself is not the problem. Attachments add weight, but core rifle weight is stable. Hydration systems, similar to Pacific Logic. A modern soldier often carries a 3-liter hydration bladder, Camelback type. 3 liters is about 3.2 kilograms, or 7 pounds. Pacific soldier also carried 2 to 4 quarts, 4 to 8 pounds. So water weight, again, stays in same category. This is a reinforcing pattern. Water weight stays universal and constant across wars.
Medical. Weight category bigger today. In WW2, the soldier often carried bare minimum, compressed bandage, maybe sulfa packet, morphine syrette for squad-level medical distribution. Today, the standard IFAC, individual first aid kit, includes tourniquet, hemostatic gauze, NPA, chest seal, and trauma dressing. The modern IFAC weighs about 1.5 to 2.0 pounds. The WW2 Soldier's Med Kit weighed 0.6 pounds, so medical weight increased about 3x. Communication, the biggest strategic difference. WW2 riflemen rarely had direct comms. Modern rifleman has radio access. Even a standard infantry squad uses more radios. Radios weigh about 2 to 4 pounds with batteries, plus spares, plus headset weight. The modern soldier is a node in a network, and that network has mass. Load distribution. More scientific now. WW2 load distribution was basically put it all on suspenders and pack. Now walk. Modern Army uses ALICE, MOLLE, plate carriers, hip belt systems, but still, complaints about load exist. In Afghanistan 2012, 101st Airborne Infantrymen sometimes patrolled with 105 to 120 pounds loads at high altitude. Some carried 130 pounds on approach marches. There are documented cases where infantry carried nearly 50 to 60% of their body weight. Modern Army medical boards have injury statistics. About 30 to 40% of chronic lower back problems are traced to load. This means the modern soldier is as overloaded as the late 1944 GI, but because the source of weight changed, his mobility limitations changed. WW2 soldier's weight equals wool plus ammo plus grenades plus tools. Modern soldier's weight equals armor plus batteries plus radios plus medical.
The irony. WW2 riflemen had better stamina mobility. WW2 infantrymen, especially Sicily 1943 or Normandy's summer 1944, carried 70 to 80 pounds and was exhausted. But he did not carry ceramic armor plates. He did not carry 10 pounds of batteries. He did not carry 3 to 4 pounds of steel rails for optics. He carried weight distributed across cloth, and weight could be dropped quickly. The modern soldier cannot drop his armor. It is his survival guarantee. It is doctrine to never remove plates in combat. So even if modern soldier is fitter and more trained, his mobility is not as free. Research in U.S. Army Natick labs concluded that modern soldier sprint time under fire is often worse than 1944 soldier sprint time. Load is too heavy. What would a WW2 soldier say if he could see a modern infantryman? He would be amazed not at armor plates, but at electronics, radios on every man, GPS, rifle optics, night vision. This is the true revolutionary difference, not the rifle. The rifle is evolution. The night is revolution. Night vision changed infantry warfare more than any single piece of equipment since the machine gun. WW2 soldier fought blind at night. Modern soldier owns the night, but ownership has a weight tax. Batteries. The final comparison table. Category 1944 ETO-GI, 2020 U.S. Infantry. Rifle weight, approximately 9.5 pounds, approximately 8.5 to 9.3 pounds. Body armor, none, 22 to 30 pounds. Ammunition weight, approximately 5 to 7 pounds, approximately 5 to 7 pounds. Water weight, approximately 2 to 4 pounds, approximately 4 to 7 pounds. Medical kit weight, approximately 0.6 pounds, approximately 1.8 pounds. Radio weight, 0 pounds, 2 to 4 pounds. Electronics, NVG, etc., 0 pounds, 3 to 10 pounds. Typical combat load, 72 to 90 pounds, 90 to 120 pounds.
Conclusion. Weight did not vanish. Weight evolved. The modern U.S. soldier is the most technologically empowered infantryman in human history, but also one of the heaviest. The paradox is absolute. Modern equipment removes uncertainty. Modern equipment increases weight. Armor saves life, but reduces agility. Electronics increase situational awareness, but add battery mass. A WW2 GI in late 1944 carried huge weight because of harsh weather, hedgerows, fear of tanks. A modern soldier carries huge weight because of electronics, armor, network integration. And the final irony, the human body has not evolved between 1944 and 2025. It's still the same human skeleton, now tasked with carrying even more, carrying even more, carrying even more, carrying even more.